This is the Tenpoint Siege RS410. Great new crossbow out from Tenpoint that we wanted to tell you about. This has a lot of new technology for Tenpoint built into it that makes the shooting experience better, and also is just better for interaction between the archer and the bow. That AccuSlide we're going to tell you about is just a safer system. It has a silent cock, but then you can also decock it just by unwinding the handle. You don't have to press any buttons. It's super simple to operate, which it makes it safer in the long run for the user. So we're going to tell you about this bow, let you see it in operation, but first let's run through the specs of the Siege RS410. The Tenpoint Siege RS410 measures 26.5 inches from the back of the bow to the front end. It shoots arrows at 410 feet per second. It's going to be 12.3 inches from axle to axle when the bow is not cocked, 7.5 inches wide when the bow is cocked. Along with the bow, you're also going to get 6 Evo X center punch bolts, which measure 16 inches. All right, so what are we looking at here? This is the Tenpoint Siege RS410. It is, as we mentioned, a reverse draw crossbow. What that means is the front of the bow essentially is back here towards the handle and the string is up at the end. So why is that important? It allows you to have this longer power stroke without extending the bow. As we mentioned, this bow is only 26.5 inches long. To have this long of a power stroke with the bow flipped over, the bow would have to be much longer. So that's one of the reasons Tenpoint uses the reverse draw. Also, with the head of the bow being back right over the handle, it balances a lot nicer and it's quieter. This bow is definitely a lot quieter than a lot of crossbows that you see out on the market there, which is important because sometimes crossbows can be loud. This one is not. With the bow, of course, let's look at some other features here. You're going to have a foot stirrup. This is a bow that has a hand crank on it, so it's not really important to put your foot in there. That's why it's so narrow. This is actually just, you're going to set that on the ground for protection and then push on the back end when you crank the handle. You got string stops here. Those help keep this bow nice and quiet. And of course, you're going to have your 10-point standard. It's a variable power scope that you adjust to the speed of your bow, because there's multiple reticles inside of here, which they do light up, red or green, depending on how you like it. So you're going to turn this dial to set the bow to the speed that your bolts are shooting. That's going to have a variable magnification. It's like 1 to 4 power, depending on the speed of your bow. Super clear, great scopes. Tenpoint always has good optics on their bows. Now, of course, typical of Tenpoint, we've got this nice finger protection system here. It's pretty darn near impossible to get your fingers up into the string path, which that's what you don't want to do. So just holding on to the bottom, get settled in. Nice clear optics on there. It gives me 4 aiming dots. There are 3 reticle lines, 4 aiming dots. So you can calibrate this and figure out what your shot distances are. But we got a 2-stage trigger. All right, so that is the Tenpoint Siege RS410. Great new crossbow out from Tenpoint.
Today we're here to take a look at the all-new Viper S400 from Tenpoint Crossbows. Well, unless you guys have been living under a rock or maybe in a tree stand or a ground blind for the last couple weeks, you probably know that the folks over at Tenpoint Crossbows released an all-new line of bows at this year's ATA show that are packed full of a lot of really awesome features. And the Viper S400 is one of those new bows. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to run you through all the new features on this particular bow, show you what they are, kind of how they work, and why they're beneficial to you as a shooter. The first feature we're going to talk about is the new AccuSlide cocking and decocking mechanism. This is by far the biggest advancement on these new bows from Tenpoint for this year. And I'm going to show you exactly how it works. It's very simple, but it's also very safe and really pretty cool. So what you're going to see here is just like the old bows, we've got a lever that's mounted in the stock down here. Now what you are going to notice is they changed this up a little bit this year, so this fits in here a little bit tighter than they have in the past, so you don't have to worry about them maybe coming loose, wearing out, falling out as you're stalking around the wood. So when you get ready to cock this bow for the first time, you're going to pull the lever out. You're going to notice that the end is actually keyed this time. So you've got a keyed end that's going to fit right here. It's going to snap in there. And it's actually going to be solid in there. You can't pull it out without actually depressing this button to pull it out when you're done. So you're going to put it right in there. And now what you're going to do, so when the bow is already the trigger position is back, and we need to cock this bow back. So what you're going to do is you are simply going to start unwinding this to take the pressure off of this trigger box. And what you're going to do is you're going to see there's a little lever right here. You're going to press on that lever, and it's actually going to release the trigger box. So you're going to release it out, and you're going to be able to slide this whole trigger box forward. Once you hear it clip into there, you're done, and at that point you can start winding back. Now what you guys are going to notice, or maybe not notice, is that it is completely silent, right? A lot of bows, when you crank them back, they make a clicking noise as you come back. This is completely silent, which is great for hunting application. But also important on this device, as you can see, I can let it go. This bow is halfway cocked back. I can completely let go of this cocking mechanism, and it does not move. If at this point I decide I want to let this bow down and I don't want to actually cock it back, all I got to do is reverse the other direction and let it down. It's literally that simple. You're also going to notice that on this lever here, you may have seen it, it actually extends out, so it goes from a short position to a longer position. When you extend it out longer, it's going to give you a little bit more leverage and actually make it easier to crank this bow back. So depending on what kind of situation you're in, if you're in a tree stand or a ground blind or somewhere where you can't afford a lot of movement, a lot of tight spaces, you can keep it collapsed down like that and just come back with it, or you can pull it out, give you a little bit more leverage. So now at this point, we're going to draw this bow all the way back. You can see the entire trigger box is moving back. If you guys have noticed, they've redesigned their stocks for this year. So we've got a new stock. They were able to trim about, a half a pound off of this bow, which weighs 7.5 pounds, thanks to the new stock design.
This is Tenpoint's new Shadow NXT, and I'm here to tell you about it. First of all, I was curious what the legendary Tenpoint company would do after now companies like Raven and even Mission with Matthews have ratcheted up the competition and really cut into Tenpoint's former dominance of that really high-end market share in high-end crossbows. But I'll tell you what they've done. They've really come back and they're offering this powerhouse crossbow with a ton of features that have a lot of the features that make some of those other bows so good, yet they're offering this one for a little bit less price. This actually represents Tenpoint's midline, which of course in the scheme of crossbows, that's still at the upper level. But you can get into this crossbow, have all the performance, and have this narrow width that I'm going to talk about for around $1,200, which again is much better than some of the $2,000 or even $2,500 price tags going on at the moment. But without further ado, let me get into it. First of all, the thing that most stands out about this Tenpoint Shadow NXT is this narrow limb design. Sure, it does look Raven-esque at first, but they've obviously done enough that's different from Raven to procure their own patents. In a nutshell, let me tell you how this works. Rather than taking bus cables in the traditional style and slaving them to the cams and running them under the frame or under the barrel through the frame, they've slaved 4 bus cables, which they call Vortex quad cables, to either side and pin them to either side of this really robust riser. They run that through and then direct them back via this turnbuckle to each cam, and it does that on each side. Then of course the string is on the inside of the cam to increase the power stroke length without doing anything. But that's connected together so that those cables, so that those cams always stay in sync and in perfect time. But this does 3 things. Namely, 1, it eliminates that cable going under the barrel, so it eliminates the string slide, which mitigates, or if not eliminates, cable wear, so it enhances the life of the string and the cables. Secondly, whenever you have the cables pushing down to get under there with a string slide, that induces cameling because that force pulls those cables down. So with this, there's none of that downward force. So without cameling, it's inherently more accurate. And third, because of the orientation of these cables, that flexes these limbs in, and that drastically reduces the width of the bow. And I think that's probably the most important thing here. After all, I've often said and written that the worst thing to me about a crossbow is its unwieldiness. They're hard to carry and lug in the woods. That's because they have to be long, they're deep, and most of them are very wide. But this thing really does a lot to mitigate that width and makes it much easier to carry. I'll cock it here in a minute, but this thing is 6 inches axle to axle, which is incredible. So they did all this, and they still keep what Tenpoint is known for, and that's just its quality. It's hard to describe it when you pick this thing up and you shoot it. Nothing rattles, everything fits. The parts, the polymer frame that's been infused with glass is warm to the touch, but it's very rigid. Just everything is well made. That's made in America, assembled in America by people who care. Somebody signs their name off when they assemble this. It comes ready to shoot from the package. All you have to add is broadheads, and that's what Tenpoint is known for.